and delighted to welcome here Alex Ross. No, I know that that's not your name. But the thing is, I'm sorry about being late. I just did they call you Alex Philip Ross?
Well, no.
I know. His name is Alex Ross Philip.
No, it's not it either.
But no.
Close.
No,
Close.
Alex Ross Perry. I'm sorry about that. No. I mean, I just had lunch and I had a drink, and then I was told that it's not the 3 p.m. but it's 2:15, and I'm really sorry about that. So let's have a round of applause for a director of great films, The Queen of Earth, Listen Up Philip, and the member of the jury in Odessa Film Festival. Please, a little applause. Thank you. Sorry, Alex. I know it sounds like so awful. The awful beginning to me, to trying to. Okay. So our plan is to. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and then we're going to take the questions from the audience, and. I feel like a lazy fool, but the first one, what I know is you used to work in a video store, and is it true?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, no, because I feel so confused. So you worked in a video store, and I think it's a great way to know something about the tastes of something about people's tastes, about the taste of the audience. So, what have you learned about them? What have you learned, about people coming into a video store and choosing a film they want to see tonight with a girlfriend or with someone?
Well, first of all, do they have video stores here?
They used to have, but no more, because we're stealing films. We're just stealing them from internet. We're just downloading them illegally and having a great time.
Yeah. Well, was there in Ukraine or the other areas around here that kind of a culture where there would be stores? I haven't seen any.
Well, I think we had. Yeah, you could come to some shop and you could have some corner with the videotapes, that you could borrow. And also we had the video saloons, so you could come in and watch Caligula or something, something like that. So you could watch Caligula, maybe. Well, I know it was very, 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 very popular here, Caligula movie. I mean, it's like the director's cut is like 4 hours long, but everybody wanted to watch it.
Yeah, but those don't exist anymore.
No.
Well, yeah, I worked in a couple stores off and on, and met a lot of the people that I make movies with in the last store that I worked in. And I guess the biggest lesson from places like that is to sort of democratize what movie watching is, where one person you can recommend that they would take home a very serious, challenging art film, but you can also give them a fun action movie at the same time. And to me, in stores, everything is equal. Okay,
so you were not snobbish about their choices. So they want to see some romantic comedy, and you say no, you should watch Bergman or I don't know, something like that. No, you fool, it's not the right choice. Did you do that?
No, I mean I think that you could have done that, but it's more there's. In the store I worked in, 60,000 titles about, so it makes more sense to sort of say, well, if you want that romantic comedy, maybe there's this old kind of funny British or Scottish comedy as well.
That you would not understand without subtitles.
Sure, so perhaps if you like that, you should get both, rather than just getting one or the other. So if someone came in with a romantic comedy, you would be able to say, in addition to that, perhaps you would like something else, so that you can take what you want, but also now I can give you a recommendation of something you might not have known you wanted.
Was it in any way, was it educational for you? I mean, have you discovered anything new for yourself from working from the store? I mean, any titles, any particular names?
Well, yeah, it was a big place for me to learn that there's movies that you don't get taught in film schools, or movies that don't screen in theaters, as classic films, but they are worth revisiting, or they are worth discovering for the first time. And previously you would think, every great film is in a curriculum or in a book, and working there and having all these people to recommend things to me, you learn that there's thousands of great films that very few people remember or care about at all. And they're potentially very important and life-changing. And if you treat them seriously and you discover them, then they can be as important to you as the most famous and well-regarded films of all time. Just treating everything with the same level of respect.
Well, like a few days ago, I just rewatched two of your films, The Queen of Earth and Listen Up, Philip. And I'm such a big fan of Elizabeth Moss, and she's so heartbreaking in Queen of Earth. And you start the film with a close-up, with her crying, And I just wanted to ask you, so. How come you're so lucky working with her so much? I mean, most of us know her, of course, because of Mad Men, because of Peggy Olson, but she's a regular actor in your films. And how did you meet? How did you discover her? What do you think her perspective after finishing this mammoth of the series?
Well, I first met her when we were casting my third movie, Listen Up, Philip, which was the first time I ever worked with or met professional actors. At the time, Mad Men was not finished. It was about to film its final season. And we just sort of clicked right away, and the collaboration was so easy and fun and effortless that immediately I wanted to make another movie with her. And by then I learned a lot about what she was capable of as an actress, and the sort of things that, I knew her work from shows like Mad Men as well, but I learned when making my first movie with her that there's a lot that she's capable of that you don't see on the show. And it became sort of a fun goal to then make a film specifically to utilize all these other skills of hers that you don't see when you watch her other work. So I knew that she was very quick on her feet and very good at improvising and finding moments kind of in the midst of filming to elaborate on and grow and make into a larger sort of character moment. So I designed a whole movie to be elastic, for her to sort of have the breathing room in every scene to bring her own ideas. And we just sort of were talking about the movie from the very beginning, instead of the way it had been initially, where she received a script and came and did it, and we had the collaboration on set. She was involved from the very beginning, and we were developing things together, and she was involved with other actors and the locations, and just every step of the way was a collaboration. And that was really nice, and it gave her a lot of freedom and comfort to, I think, deliver a performance that you have to really trust the people that you're working with in order to go that far.
Well, I read the Queen of Earth interviews you gave, and so of course the film has like some Roman Polanski vibe, but one of the influences that you mentioned was Interiors by Woody Allen, and one of the things that Mr. Allen says that all the time, that he influenced nobody, that there is no director that he influenced. He cannot see any heir or any kind of a director who does anything, I mean, in particular that he could influence. But what do you think on that? Is that true? And did he influence you in any way? Because you're a New York filmmaker, and New York is such a huge medium for Woody Allen. So what do you think on that? Does his monstrous filmography influence you?
Certainly. I mean, we're always looking at his movies. Each movie we make, we're looking at a different Woody Allen movie. For Listen Up, Philip, Husbands and Wives was the movie that everyone on the crew was watching. I made sure that everybody, cinematography and costumes and production design, actors, I made sure everyone was looking at that movie. And then, on Queen of Earth, we started talking about Interiors and September, which were both sort of claustrophobic, single location-ish dramas that he made that seemed like big departures from the kind of movies he was making. And after
he was trying to emulate Bergman, maybe
Sure.
his big influence of his.
So after making Listen Up, Philip, which was sort of a very big, sprawling comedy, making a small, one-location drama thriller felt very appropriate. And he's one of the people who, after Annie Hall made Interiors, and it just seems like such a strange follow-up to such a radically different movie. And that was something that we were talking a lot about that I was very inspired by.
Okay, and one of the things that you can, take from the Queen of Earth is like women suffer so much because of men. Why does it happen? I know that's a very silly question, but I'd like to know your take on that. Why do women, suffer so much because of men?
Well, I don't know.
Because you have two main characters, they're friends, and they have these monologues. Then when they speak about their relationships, and I was struck that like they're so unhappy because of some shitty guy who dumped them or who ignored them or something like that.
Right. Well, we wanted to make sure that the men in the movie were depicted as very weak and foolish. Neither of the male characters are cool or interesting. They're both very, very dopey and silly. And in the tradition of movies like this that we were talking about and excited by, a lot of them have women being pushed to an emotional breaking point by other people, usually men. That's just sort of the rules of the genre that we were working in. And it seemed appropriate to respect the way that every film that we were talking about sort of functions.
Okay, and another thing, talking about selfish or not sympathetic guys. The main character, the character of Jason Schwartzman, who's so self-centered, so much in love with himself. So, is it? Did you take this example, this character from your real life? Are you any similar to to Philip, to Jason Schwartzman character?
Well, there was a lot of people I knew around the time that I was writing that were like that. These very charismatic and talented and funny guys who I was close to, and I became very amazed at the way that their behavior was sort of forgiven constantly. And that's the case with both of the male characters in that movie. The Philip character and then the Ike character who he befriends are both men who are very good at what they do and very fun to be around for people because they're humorous and quick-witted and intelligent, but they're very terrible at maintaining relationships and very bad to people who care about them, who want to be close to them. And I knew and still do a lot of guys like that. And I just became very curious about why that sort of behavior was forgiven or tolerated so consistently by the friends of these people or the girlfriends of these people who can just look at guys acting that way and say, well, that's just the way he is. Not, this is totally unacceptable and I can't be near this person, but to just say, well, yeah, he's just like that. And there's no, you take him for what he is. And I was very amazed at how much people could get away with. And I wanted to do a movie that was sort of asking that question.
Are you any similar to that? Or are you a nice guy? Or because there is a heartbreaking moment just in the beginning of the film when he first, the Philip, he meets his ex-girlfriend and tells her off. And then he meets his former former friend. Maybe they studied together, and then we see him driving away in a wheelchair,
Right.
and it's so heartbreaking. It's funny, and it's, you know, but when you see the worst side of this character, so you just know from the very first instance that he's a, you know, some shitty guy.
Right. I mean, I myself could never get away with any of that behavior. And the people I know who can and do get away with that, I don't understand. I can't do anything like that and have people just say, well, that's just the way he is. So, but he's fine, you know. Once you get to know him, he's fine. I can't get away with that at all. So I'm not like that even a little bit. But a lot of people I know can act like that or worse. And so long as you're not the person that they're acting that way towards, people just are okay with it. It's very confusing.
Let's talk about New York a little bit. I was just trying to look up in my phone the name of I character, this great actor who's on Game of Thrones, actually.
Right.
Like, he was blown up on Game of Thrones. I'm sorry if this is a spoiler
No,
for
I've
you.
seen it.
Okay.
Apologize to
No, I'm
others.
sorry.
Maybe a
He was
spoiler
blown
for
up, but
somebody.
okay, sorry. But
They don't know, but that movie didn't play here, so they might not even know the actor you're talking about.
okay. Well, not a problem. But the thing is, you can get it illegally here.
Okay.
Yeah, you can get it illegally if you wanna. If you want to see the films of
that
Alex Росс Perry, you can do that illegally. I'm
There's
sorry
no
about
stores.
that. Well, there are some, but you know, we have to, you know, change our mentality first. But no, the thing is, so this guy, he says, when he meets Philip, when he meets this aspiring writer who thinks a lot about himself, and he says that you should, you know, get away from New York because the city has a lot of creative energy, but not a lot of productive energy, and he advises him to get some, you know, country retreat or like that. So is it true? Is it so? How is it to work in New York? Does it have a lot of does it have a productive energy? Are you able to work, you know, to be complete there?
I can,
Okay.
but only after a while of trying to figure out the best way to be productive. But I do find that a lot of people in New York, and this is what both Listen Up Philip and Queen of Earth are sort of about, a lot of people in New York seem to live there just to leave a lot.
Because it's an exciting city.
Yeah, but it's
Because of
also
that.
very easy to go other places. I mean, I see this now in the summer at home. You can just see it in my neighborhood. It's very empty. On the weekends, in the summer, everyone just goes away. They go somewhere else. And I think that to me is such a fascinatingly huge part of New York, that most weekends people go away, or they drive away for a week, or take a train somewhere, and people just seem to be gone all the time. I can't think of other places where people are away from home so much. And in New York, people just seem to be traveling all the time. And I think people really enjoy living there, and I think they really enjoy being away as well. And it's very, very confusing and fascinating that so many people want so badly to be there, and then also are so excited to get away.
You just said it took you a while to get accustomed, to be productive there. So what were the hardships? What was hard for you to get productive there? What were the obstacles?
It's just it's hard to settle into a comfortable way of living where you can actually work. If you don't have a proper home with a nice space to work in, then I don't know how you could get anything done. And just because of the cost of living and the way people have to live, some people just, if you have roommates and you have one room in an apartment, and in your room you have a bed and a desk and a dresser and a bookshelf, I don't know how you can sit at that desk and do good work. To me it makes sense to have a nice home where you can have a desk over in an area where there's nothing else and it's not all together. So it took me a long time to sort of create a home and a lifestyle that allows for sitting at the desk every day and writing and working and being productive. Because for a long time it's very hard to understand that. That's why you see people out working in cafes or restaurants with their computers, which...
Like Carrie Bradshaw.
Sure.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. I mean, it seems so hard to sit out in public working.
Writing sex columns.
Maybe you could do that in public, but to write like film scripts or books or whatever people are writing, just to be sitting in a cafe, it's very confusing to me. I don't understand that at all. It seems like the hardest thing to do. So to me, it just makes sense that you have to sit at home and work, and it just took me a while to understand how important it was to sort of have a sacred workspace.
But you don't have a roommate, because one of the strangest thing for me, I have friends living in New York, and they cannot live without roommates. It's not. Sometimes it's just a financial question, the question of finance. But sometimes they just think, no, we feel too lonely if there is nobody in the apartment. And I just think, why? So, do you have any explanation to that? It has nothing to do with filmmaking, nothing to do with the cinema you make. But do you have an explanation to that?
No, I mean, it is expensive, and a lot of apartments are either an apartment for a couple or an apartment that has multiple different rooms. So, like an apartment that's for a couple is expensive because it's meant to be lived in by two people, so you can't live there by yourself necessarily. But then an apartment with 3 bedrooms, a couple shouldn't live there, because then what do you do with those other bedrooms?
I'm sorry I made you talk about that. I'm sorry.
No, but in Listen Up, Philip, and in the movie we just shot in April, the only people who live together are people who are married or in a relationship. I've never done anything about roommates or anything like that. And in Queen of Earth, both of the characters sort of arrive at this lake house, and you really have no idea what their lives are like. You don't know where they live or how they live, or do they have, you can't picture either one of these characters with anybody else. You can't picture these 2 women going home to a roommate or anything, but you also can't really picture them just living alone. So I think asking the other half of how people live is worth thinking about. But to me, it's all connected to just where your head is and how you live and how you sort of treat your home and what your home means to you and how productive you can be within your home.
Getting back to work, how is it going with the live action Winnie the Pooh for Disney? So have you done that? Is it over? Is it complete? Because there is from what I've heard, this is a very interesting concept about Christopher Robin coming back after the college. Mm-hmm. And I thought that he's coming to his childhood friends, Winnie the Pooh and the donkey and all these guys. And I just thought maybe this film was already shot. It was called Ted with Mark Wahlberg. Mm-hmm. You remember that? So how is it going? Tell us a little bit about that.
It's going well. I've been writing it for over a year, and yeah, I just turned in another draft on Friday before I came here.
So Winnie the Pooh, does he get to smoke some weed, or maybe not, because he's a Disney character?
Right.
Yeah. So what happens to them? Can you just tell a little bit about it? Because this is a live action, so we're gonna have some special effects, or is it going to be? I'm sorry. So how is it going? What's the concept?
Yeah, it's from. I don't know if you saw or bootlegged the recent Jungle Book movie that just came out.
I haven't seen it. No, it's everywhere in the cinemas actually, mm-hmm. So it wasn't bootlegged yet.
It's the same producer as that, so it'll be the same sort of technology to, like you said, do a story about older Christopher Robin reuniting with his friends.
What is it like to work on this monster corporation like Disney? I mean, they bought everyone now. I mean, they have Star Wars, they have Marvel. Right. Now they got you.
Yep.
So
it's quite a progression from Star Wars to Marvel to me. Yeah, I mean, they're great. Honestly, I've worked for a lot of companies, not a lot, but a handful of companies and television, trying to write television stuff. And basically every company I've ever worked for is horrible in one way or another. And working for Disney is great. Everyone there loves their job. Everyone there loves the stories they're telling and the movies they're making. and nobody there wants to be doing anything else with their lives other than bringing these stories to life for audiences. And every other place I've ever worked, you can tell people there just want, all they want is a better job. And all anyone at Disney wants is to do their job really well so that they can make these stories as great as they can be for everybody in the world. So it's great, and everyone I work with is, I mean, it's shocking. It's the most I have friends who are writing movies for Disney or directing them, and everyone says the same thing. They say, yeah, you'd think it would be really hard, but it's actually just the best place to work.
Okay, but do they make you, write these cute, smiling characters? Like all the princes and princesses?
Well, no, there's no princesses in Winnie the Pooh. And Eeyore is not smiling, so it's all very familiar.
Okay, you said in one of the interviews, you said that you're okay with writing the script, sitting alone in your apartment with your cats. Do you have any cats, or was it just a metaphor?
No, I have 3.
3 cats.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about them. Just thank you. Yeah, because everybody wants to know about cats. They're cat lovers. Actually,
It seems like a major cat city. There's cats everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone owns a cat or if they just feed them on the street. But it does seem to be a very cat-friendly city. And there's pet stores everywhere, too. There's a pet store about every 2 or 3 blocks, it seems. Yeah, I have 3 cats. They're all inspiring different characters in the Winnie the Pooh script.
Really?
Yeah. One of them is in Listen Up, Philip, if you've seen that.
Yeah.
The cat,
this is your cat?
Yeah, the cat that Elizabeth Moss adopts.
Yeah.
Is one of our cats, and he's very greedy and very, very sort of like a rabbit or an owl character from Winnie the Pooh. He's very proud and arrogant. And then I have another cat that's all gray, and he's very sweet, and he's kind of like the Pooh of the family. He's very sweet and just sort of follows me around. And if I'm like working here, he's just sitting on the desk. And then we have another cat that we just adopted a year ago that's like a Siamese with a brown face and blue eyes. And he's very mean and he doesn't like to be held, or he swats a lot.
Like all beautiful guys, yet too mean to everyone,
So we have these 3, and they all have very different personalities, but they all get along very well.
So they're the part of your creative process.
Absolutely.
We can tell that.
Yeah, I don't know what it would. Maybe that's why people go work in cafes, because they don't have anything at home to be entertained by.
Or maybe they just want to meet the cat in the street and then get inspired.
Hardly any of those in New York, sadly. But maybe if I didn't have 3 little friends at home helping, I would need to go work in public too. But I can stay home and work for a full day and just be amused and have little things happening all the time and have entertainment just around me. So it's great having them, I think, for a writer's lifestyle.
I know that you optioned the Don DeLillo novel. So this is a very different thing from Winnie the Pooh. He's like very different author. So do you work simultaneously? I mean, at the same time, do you develop the script for Winnie the Pooh? And can you tell about this novel?
Yeah, I've been working. The book is called The Names. It's a Don DeLillo book from 1982 that he published right before White Noise. And I have been working on them both at the same time throughout most of the last year.
Does it make you mad? How do you switch between them?
I don't know. It just sort of works out. Just because you have deadlines for different stuff, it just works out that something is due, and then I have 3 weeks where everyone's reading it, so I don't have anything to do for one job, so then I can kind of switch gears, and then I know when those people are going to get back to me, so then I know when I should wrap up whatever else I'm doing. So it's sort of like juggling.
And then you just think that Winnie the Pooh got too dark. Then you think, no, this is for Don DeLillo.
It's tough to keep it straight sometimes, but they're obviously very different. But they're also the first things I've ever done that I didn't create the characters for. So in that way, they're actually pretty similar projects, because I didn't create the characters in DeLillo's book, but in writing a script to then make a movie, I have to make them mine enough that I understand the characters as though I created them. So there's all this extra work that goes into characters that exist in a novel that millions of people have read and know these characters, and I have to create them again in a way that when I'm talking about the script with a producer or with actors, that I feel as though I created the character, even though I didn't. So I just have to, because if someone says, well, what is this character? Why do they do this? I can't say, I don't know.
Yeah, just read the book.
Yeah.
You have pick up the book.
Yeah, I can't say I don't know why they do it, because that's what he wrote 35 years ago. I have to be able to say, well, my version of the character does it for this reason. And I don't know if that's what he intended, but as far as I'm concerned, that's what this character is about. And that's sort of about the process of taking something and adapting it to make it my own. And it's the same thing with Pooh. I didn't create the character of Pooh.
But there is no version of him getting older. I think you create him.
Yeah, well, Pooh doesn't get older.
Never.
No, I mean, they're all...
So he's not getting gray,
No.
and grumpy and, like...
No, he'll be as you remember him, but it's the same thing. I have to... If someone says, why does he act like this? I can't just say it because he's always acted like that. You have to create the character in a way that he's my character, because I spend 1.5 years writing this script. But it's a very challenging process to take a character that's always existed. In the case of Pooh, exists in the minds of billions of people around the world, and try to figure out a way to say, well, this is the version of Winnie the Pooh and Tigger and Eeyore that I am writing. And I understand these characters as though I created them. Because for all intents and purposes, I have to pretend that I did create them as long as I'm writing this script. And I can't just say, well, that's the way he's always been, so that's the way I'm going to write him. I have to say, but why does he do that here? And if it doesn't make sense to me, then it won't make sense to anybody who watches the movie.
Coming back to Delillo, did you like Cosmopolis by David Cronenberg?
I did like Cosmopolis.
Because I mean, it's quite a challenge to adapt Delillo's books for the screen, and
That's the only one.
Yeah, and so I know a lot of people who were confused what was happening on the screen. Like, okay, the way they have Rob Pattinson doing some things, driving around the city in a limo, and there were people like, what is going on? So, what's your take? How to make something very intricate, seem easy?
If people didn't like Cosmopolis, they will certainly not like this movie either.
So they will hate it.
Yeah, except that, Cosmopolis took place in a world that was recognizably our own. It took place in a limousine in New York City, albeit a very fictional New York City, sort of special effects and shot in Toronto. So it sort of takes place half in reality, and then I think people were kind of confused, and it sort of was involved with finance and came out, just a few years after financial crises struck, and it sort of seemed to be more familiar than it ever could possibly be. So the names, which takes place in Greece and India and the Middle East, it's just sort of for audiences, it all takes place in these fantasy places. I mean, everyone has this beautiful idea of what Greece looks like, and you can make a movie there, and people won't say, well, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. They'll just say, well, that must be the way this is. If you are an American living in Greece, working in insurance, that must be the way this is, instead of saying this makes no sense. So I have a little bit more leeway. But also Cosmopolis is a 150-page book. The Names is 350. So still trying to make it into a movie. So Cosmopolis is sort of stretched, and this is sort of squeezed. But I think to me, the sort of movie that I'm thinking of more than Cosmopolis is Inherent Vice.
Did you like? It was the first time that Thomas Pynchon was adapted. Did you like it?
I did like it.
Because I'm a fan, and I love it so much, and it wasn't screened in Ukraine at all. So we had to, do
Sure.
our thing to watch it.
I did like it. I didn't love it, but I think it's a great adaptation of a book that I don't love either. I love all of his books, but that actually I would probably say is my least favorite. And then it's an interesting adaptation of a book that doesn't really work. And then the adaptation works perfectly. But the system it's built on just doesn't work. So it's very fascinating as a movie, and I've seen it a couple times, and I find myself revisiting it, so I really do like it. But in terms of taking an unwieldy book that sort of makes no sense, and then turning it into an unwieldy movie that sort of makes no sense, I think that's as good as you can do, and that's kind of what's on my mind. Except the name sort of is a thriller, and it sort of has murder and cults and espionage type stuff in it. So there's stuff you can sort of allude to, which hopefully can convince people that they're watching something that's genuinely exciting. But it's a challenge. But Cosmopolis and Inherent Vice and somewhere in there is kind of what I'm trying to do.
Well, another thing that I saw you naming your favorite criterion titles, and there were like, I think five first, three through four movies were like your favorite ones. And the thing that I'm trying to ask like everyone we were having Q&A is, okay, we're always citing or thinking of French New Wave, German New Wave, or New Hollywood. So what do you think? What directors from these times, from maybe your generation or a little bit older generation, is going to inspire the next filmmakers? What do you think? Can you elaborate on that?
I don't know.
Because in your criterion list you had Wes Anderson. I mean, he's not 3-4. I mean, he's younger. You had Jim Jarmusch, and maybe this are all others are older, like that.
Yeah, I think it remains to be seen what anyone working today will be able to influence, because going back to what you were saying earlier, earlier directors, like early Wes Anderson movies, like I might not have seen them in the theater, but there was a culture where you would go to a store and there would be someone there recommending these movies to you, and the tapes of these movies were available, and they were sort of able to grow in reputation and be discovered just because they existed. And I think it remains that working now will be able to affect, because if a movie doesn't do very much business now as opposed to 20 years ago, it might not have the opportunity to find whoever is in the next generation and really take hold of them and sink in and affect them in any major way. And I think that might mean that movies like mine, or from people that I know that don't do a lot of business initially, might never have the thing that Wes Anderson or Jim Jarmusch movies had, where someone like me growing up, I could then discover those movies on my own, because a friend would recommend them, or I would see the box and I would think it looked good. And I think maybe 5 years from now, movies like mine, there might not be a 13 or 14-year-old discovering them, because if it's just on the internet, they don't know how. And if you're talking bootlegging and torrenting, there's just too much. There's no way to say, oh, I meant to watch that movie when I saw it at the festival 3 years ago, but I missed it. Now I should finally see it because I'm here and I keep seeing it. They'll just be one of a million things on the website that they're downloading from, and they'll never remember, oh, I meant to see that. A friend of mine saw that and said it was good a year ago. I should check that out. It'll just say, I don't know what that is. So I think it remains to be seen if anything being made today will be able to have the lasting impact without the sort of ancillary video market that has created a sort of long-term career for a lot of these directors.
But we have the streaming services. Does it change any way that you approach the films? So we have Amazon Studios, we have Netflix, we have Hulu, but you work for Disney. But I mean, does it change in any way the way you approach films? Does it make it easier to make a film? What do you think?
Well, those companies are all, at best, 3 years old.
Yeah.
So it remains to be seen what effect they're going to have.
Yeah.
Something can't really change in 3 years. If those companies still exist in 10 years, A, that'll be a miracle. And B,
Why do you think so? Why do you think it's going to be a miracle?
it just doesn't seem like anything any of these companies are doing is long term. I mean, what was Netflix 10 years ago? Very, very young service to mail you a DVD. And what is it now? They make TV shows. Every week they release 15 episodes at once of a TV show. Now they're making their own movies and they're releasing their own movies. So 10 years from now, there's no way they're going to be doing either one of those things still. You know, the production of their own content 10 years from now could be as small of their business as the DVDs are right now. 10 years ago, Amazon was only good for buying books and movies. Now you can buy furniture and appliances
And Woody Allen series.
and Woody Allen TV shows. And so 10 years from now, the stuff they're making could be as marginalized on their website as what they used to sell, which was just, you know, videos and books at an affordable price. So who knows? I think all this stuff is very young, and I'll be amazed if these companies, you know, it's like a conquering ruler. Like, none of these companies, like, their end game wasn't to do what they're doing now. They just want to keep going and going. This is just phase 3 of 100 for them. They don't want us. They don't say, now we can make our own TV shows. Now we can stop. This is what it's all been about. 20 years of building Amazon.com up from the ground has been about making sitcoms. So now we're done. Obviously, they're going to keep going and doing something else, and who knows what that will be.
VR.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think any of these companies are going to stop until they control an absurd amount of your lives. And I don't know how that will benefit the creation and distribution of relevant films. I want to be optimistic about it, but I think we need a couple more years to see what happens.
Are you afraid of technology?
I'm not afraid of it. I just
No,
don't
I mean,
care. I just don't really know it.
okay.
I don't understand what people's relationship is to phones or computers. It seems very intimate now, which I don't feel. So I don't know. I feel like people, yeah, they're too connected to stuff, and I don't know where that goes either.
Because I'm a little bit afraid of VR, of Pokemon Go. I'm just thinking that, you know, people are gonna get crazy and just kill each other with their phones.
Sure, well, they'll just kill each other with weapons instead of their phones. I think maybe if they're just playing Pokemon, that's better than shooting each other. But
Did you see that video from Central Park in New York? They just found some rare Pokemon, and like 1,000 guys
Yeah.
went there.
I didn't. I would never watch something like that. But like, how can it be rare? It doesn't exist. I don't know what that means either. Like, it's not a physical object. Like, rare to me growing up in the 80s meant like a comic book that they didn't print a lot of, or a movie that went out of print before they could make very many copies of the tape. That's what rare. I don't know what rare means when it's in reference to something that doesn't exist in the real world. I don't understand. I think that word lost its meaning a long time ago. You see something on YouTube, rare, you know, rare commercial. It can't be rare. It's on. I'm watching it. If it was rare, then it would be unavailable. It's very strange. But yeah, I did not watch that video of people in Central Park. But I guess it's better for them to be playing Pokemon than you know. I don't know.
Because they go on foot a lot, so I mean,
Sure.
it's useful. I think.
Yeah, why
I
not?
think so. So, and another thing, let's talk about your filmmaking. Your films are highly stylized. I mean, you have this voiceover in Listen Up, Philip, and it's like noirish look, and a noirish sense to gives a noirish sense to vibe to the film. Or you have this, one of the things that I love, that you have these titles over the faces of your characters, you know, like in yellow letters. So why do you do that? Are you interested more in something stylized than more, you know, like not real, but I mean, do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, well, a lot of the decisions that we're making early on in the filmmaking process, we're looking almost exclusively at films from the 70s and 80s. And doing things like that, or with shooting the movies on film, or using the titles in a certain way, it's just a way to immediately tell an audience a lot about the aesthetics of the movie that they're watching. You know, if you see a movie and it begins and it's very grainy, because we shot it on film instead of what most movies are shot on.
That's why I asked you about technology. Are you afraid of that because you like film?
Sure. Yeah, so if the movie begins and you can see that it's sort of grainy and fuzzy, immediately your mind starts thinking of an older films that you used to watch, and then the titles come up and the titles look a certain way, and again you're thinking of a different era and you're thinking of a certain type of aesthetic decision that we want you to be thinking of. And now 3-4 minutes into the movie, we've already established almost entirety of the sort of alternate reality of the film for people. And hopefully now that you get the aesthetics and you're just in it, you can then begin understanding what the rest of the movie is going to look and feel like. And then hopefully if you see the film and 5 minutes in you're thinking, oh, this kind of looks and feels like a movie from the 70s, maybe now you're going to be able to expect that the story is not going to be quite as tight and traditional as modern films, and that if you're seeing a movie that looks and feels like something from 1982, then maybe it's going to not really have a structure of a movie from 2015. It's going to have the structure of a movie from the 80s and sort of the ending of a movie from the 70s where things sort of end unresolved, which they used to and then don't so much anymore. So now we're just sort of acclimating you to the temperature of the movie that you're going to be watching for the next hour and a half. So you
want your movies to look older than they are. I mean, is this your goal?
I mean, not just to make them look older, but just to sort of make the entire piece of work aesthetically recall a time period that I find to just be more visually pleasing. You know, we could do things that just make it look old, but you could shoot it on your phone and make it look old. But to sort of create a world, an alternate world, where there's no cell phones or computers, and the film is alive in a very grainy sort of way, and the titles do this, and the clothes are all very not contemporary.
This is some hipster feature that we associate, you know, with hipster culture, with filters on Instagram, trying to make the photos look older or vintage or something like that. So, do you like that? Do you like this aesthetics, or is it just different?
No, I don't like anything that's false.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, someone said to me once that, you know, the movies look like Instagram filters, and I said, I hope you go blind, because if you think, you know, 16 millimeter film, which hasn't changed in 100 years, if your eye tells you that looks like an Instagram filter, then you shouldn't be able to look at things. Like, that's not what eyes are made to recognize. If that's your association with something that looks that sort of saturated is what you do on your phone, then you've totally missed the point of everything you've ever seen in your life, and you don't know what images look like, and you don't understand what the point is of your phone. So to sort of, you know, people back into it like that, but for us it's just 16 millimeter movie. We can shoot Queen of Earth the same way a movie was shot in 1950, in 1960. You know, it's a French we shoot on an Aton, which is a French camera from the 60s. So we're just getting the same image quality. We shoot on lenses from the 70s. There's just nothing, we're not taking it digitally and then putting a filter on it. It just is the simplest, oldest, most classical process. Old camera, big wooden handle, old lenses, 16 millimeter film, and that's it. We don't need to do anything else. That's the only decision we need to make in order to create a world of, you know, cinema and history and aesthetics.
So you're not very kind to ignorant people.
It's not ignorance, it's just, you know, it's just backwards. You know, to say that film looks like Instagram is backwards. You know, obviously every digital technological step is meant to replicate something that doesn't exist anymore. That'd be like saying, I watched a movie on Netflix and it was like I saw it in the movie theater. It's like, no, that's the other way around. You know, if you see crisp digital projection in a movie theater, you say this kind of looks like a TV. It doesn't go the other way. I just think people need to remember that, you know, the horse pulls the cart.
Okay, then I'm sure that our audience is not ignorant, so we're going to take a few questions from them.
Should
Guys,
I put on my headset for that?
yeah, you should put on the headset. Do we have the headset?
I don't know where it is.
Нам нужны наушники для перевода. Because I was one time I was trying to translate what the guys from the audience were asking, and it was so bad.
Your translation.
My translation was so awful. Yep, here it comes.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, so пожалуйста, ваш вопрос. Your first question, please.
Добрый день. Скажите, пожалуйста, у меня есть...
Yeah, I can hear.
Окей. У меня, как молодого продюсера, есть к вам два вопроса, если позволите. Первый вопрос. Как вы считаете, как человек, знающий технологию производства с разных точек зрения, нужна ли раскадровка в фильме и используется ли на крупных компаниях раскадровка там, где разрисован каждый кадр, потому что это гораздо экономит время, а время на площадке, соответственно, очень дорого стоит. И второй вопрос. Как вы считаете, есть ли будущее у видео YouTube 360 сейчас начинает набирать популярность, или это просто игрушка, потому что невозможно сконцентрировать внимание, к сожалению, когда мы смотрим 360 вокруг себя. Видите ли вы за этим будущее или просто игрушка? Спасибо.
What about 360 degrees?
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
You know, when you watch it, you know, when you can turn all the way around and see the it's like VR, but it's not. It's without the you don't have this helmet or this special glasses.
I have not heard of that ever.
Because you're making it on film. You're making it on 16 millimeter.
I imagine that there is a future for it. It seems like something that will be popular.
Okay.
I enjoy like Google Earth and Google Street View. I find that sort of thing to be kind of fun.
So you really enjoy it?
I just enjoy entering destinations that I have been to, but not in a long time, and kind of spinning around. So I'm sure there's an audience for that, but I've never heard of this until just now.
What about storyboarding?
Storyboards, I've never done them on the 5 movies I've made in the last 7 years. Obviously they are done on almost every professional or, as you said, commercial job. But for the way I work with my cinematographer, who I met in the video store that we both worked in, you say, it would save time on set, but I think for him and I to sit there on set saying, well, this is what we drew, how do we get this, would take more time than us showing up and saying, okay, so what do we do? Well, what should we do in this room? Well, it looks like we should do this. Let's get the actors in here and see what they want to do, and then we'll kind of let them create a situation, and then we'll just figure out what we should do, rather than saying, so we need to do this, so you have to sit there, and you can't move, because we have to get this shot, and we can't show that side of the room. So this is the way we planned it before you were hired, and now that we're in this room, you have no choice but to do what we planned. I don't know. I can't imagine actors would enjoy hearing that. We like to say to them, just whatever you want. If you decide, if you're going to get up, tell us, and we'll just make sure that the whole room is ready for you to get up and walk around. And whatever you feel, you have to feel spontaneous and ready to do, and we'll adjust, rather than saying, no, this shot is very important. And then sometimes we'll say, we really want to do it this way. Can we try it? And they'll say sure, because they understand that not every scene is that demanding. And on the next scene we do, we're not going to say, just sit there and do this exactly the way we want. So it's just really about finding the whatever works best. But I've never drawn a storyboard on my 5 movies. I've never had one. I wouldn't know how to do it, and my cinematographer wouldn't want to see it either.
You work with the same cinematographer on your 5 films, so you're very monogamous about that. Did you want to try anything? How does it happen that you work with the same cameraman, with the same cinematographer?
It's the only person I know who does the work that I don't see other movies made at the same level that I ever say, that looks perfect.
Not Roger Deakins.
Well, that's not the same level. That's a whole other level of how movies get made. In terms of just my community of film friends and filmmakers and people that are kind of coming up, he's just the best, and he's always been the best, and I've always known that, and there's no reason to think otherwise. And we challenge each other, and we can fight with each other and come to beneficial conclusions of what we're trying to do. But it's just a perfect working arrangement. Like I said, I've known him since before, 3 years before we ever made a movie together, we worked renting videos. So it's a long relationship that's just built on a love of movies. We would just see movies together before I ever even thought of working together. So it's just the relationship is there for the right reasons. I didn't meet him at an interview to hire him for a job. I met him, I did, but not to hire him for a movie. I met him when he was working in a store that I wanted to work in. So the relationship exists for the right reasons, and now it exists in a professional context that it doesn't feel like I'm his boss. It just feels like we're 12 years into this friendship, and the last 7 of them have involved us making a movie every 2 years.
That's cool. We have another question. Another one?
Алекс, в нескольких из них вы выступили как актер. Вы совершенно не доверяете другим людям? Или просто любите перетаскивать одеяло на себя?
I think it was meant some kind of a joke, but what is it like, to produce, to write, to direct, and maybe to act in your own film?
I only acted in one of my own movies, and I did not like it.
Why?
It's just too much. I couldn't concentrate on doing the things that I like doing. I was spread too thin, and I had to concentrate on too many different things. I did it once, and I've never done it again, and I never will. Because I love working with other actors. I was in a movie of my own, and it was very stressful. And then my next movie, I had Jason Schwartzman, and watching him is a million times better than watching anybody else who could be in a movie. So why would I ever take away the experience of sitting in a chair watching one of my favorite actors in favor of doing it myself? And, like with editing, I edited my first 2 movies because I didn't know anybody who edited. I didn't know anyone who would edit a movie for me. Now I have an editor who's edited my last 3 movies, and I don't know how to edit anymore. The technology has changed. I've lost track of the software. The versions of it that I knew how to use are not available anymore. And now I'll just never know how to do it again because I lost it. And now I have a very trusted partner who is editing while we're shooting. So I'm very happy to have finally met the right people to take on these responsibilities and be an artist in their own right. When I'm editing a movie, I'm just editing it because I can cut and paste this shot and that shot. When a professional editor is doing it, he's an artist, and he's doing the thing he does better than anything else in the world, which is not true when I'm editing or acting. But when I have a great actor, they're doing the thing they do best. And then I have an editor, and he's doing the thing he does best. So these last couple of movies where the only thing I'm doing is writing, producing to get the movie set up in the way that I think it should be produced with the right size crew, and then sitting on set as a director and not really bothering with producing on set, because at that point everything's pretty much done, is perfect. I really only have 2 jobs now, and I used to have 5, so it's much easier for me to be making movies now than it was 5 years ago when I had to do everything.
Okay, the next one. Yep, please.
Мой вопрос как раз касается работы с другими людьми и с работой с актерами, которые вам нравятся. Во-первых, я бы хотел узнать, как Джонатану Прайсу работалось с вами, но уместнее будет спросить, как вам работалось с ним. А также вовлечение Джо Свонберга как продюсера вашего фильма. Как вам работалось с ним? И еще я видел, у вас новый проект готовится опять с Джейсоном Шварцманом и Хлоей Севиньи. Мы не знаем никаких подробностей о нем. Если вы можете о них немного нам рассказать. Благодарю вас.
So this is about golden exits, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And Jonathan Pryce,
yeah.
actually, this is the name of the guy I couldn't remember.
Right. Jonathan Pryce it was unbelievable to work with him. I was very nervous because he's a legend, obviously.
And he's so creepy on Game of Thrones, but
but when we made the movie together, it was 2 years before
I know.
he even got Game of Thrones. So we just loved him from Brazil, and
yeah, sure.
Ronin, certainly, and he's a James Bond villain. He's just a legend in many ways, and I was very intimidated. I didn't meet him. I Skyped with him, so I didn't meet him until the day before his first day of filming. And it was very intimidating. I mean, he's tall. He's like my height. He's like 6'2".
So you were not intimidated?
So he's huge.
Ah,
he's just a big guy, which I didn't expect. And
so now I know the secret why all the famous stars are short, just because the directors, they don't get intimidated by them. Okay.
It's true.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was just, but also he came into that movie, Listen Up, Philip, his first day was the 11th day of the movie. So we'd spent 2 weeks just with Jason Schwartzman and Elizabeth Moss, and suddenly, and everyone on the movie was about the same age. No one on the movie was older than 35 or so. And then all of a sudden there was this adult around, and it was very scary. We didn't know what it would be like. And immediately he was just lewd and vulgar and hilarious, and he just immediately, as a lifelong theater actor, he stepped onto the set, he read the audience, which was the crew, and he immediately started playing right to the audience. And that first day, we couldn't believe how funny he was and how in our mode he was. And ever since then, it was just a great experience working with him. As total, you want a legend like that to be really great, and he was kind, and again, throughout the shoot, the only adult around, really. And he wasn't difficult. He had no trailer. He had nothing. He just sat there and hung out and was very friendly. And Schwartzman would play Mitch Hedberg, the stand-up comedian, for him. And I'll never forget just sitting there watching Jonathan just howling with laughter when Mitch Hedberg said, if you have legs and you are not a table or a chair, you are never blocking a fire escape. And he just laughed so hard. He just loved Mitch Hedberg, and he never heard of him. So he was just a great guy and a total friend. Actually, next week in New York, we're screening Brazil with him in person on 35.
I know that you're a fan of Brazil. So you think it lasts? Because my problem was when I rewatched it a year ago, and I thought, oh, I'm not that excited that I was when I watched it for the first time. Yeah, but
I haven't seen it in a little bit, but I will rewatch it during the screening that we have him at. But it's one of my favorite movies. I imagine it will hold up.
So about the golden exits. Tell us a little bit about it.
There was another question in the middle. Oh, Joe.
Yeah. Joe Swanberg. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He is an old friend of mine at this point, almost 10 years. And he just recently started a production company to finance and sell very low-budget movies. And he said, "Do you want money for a movie?" And I said, "Yes." And then he gave me the money, and and then we made the movie, and he sold the movie, and that's the movie that played here yesterday. And he's very, hands-off and generous collaborator, and he kind of creates an excitement, and his name helps a little bit with getting other actors. And it's just, I told him, I said, when I met you 8 years ago, I never would have thought that you'd be giving me like over $100,000 of basically your own money to make a movie, but here we are. So it's just a friendship that has turned into a collaboration, and he was involved with this new movie that we just made also, which, as you mentioned, has Chloe Sevigny and Schwartzman in it again. It's like it's about 2 families in Brooklyn, and it's an ensemble, 7 main characters, which is a lot more than I've ever done. And most of the characters don't meet. It's like Magnolia or Shortcuts, where they all sort of overlap, but not really. Both families kind of being brought together by one character who goes back and forth, but people don't realize that she's kind of going back and forth between the 2 families. So it's like a kind of spiderweb ensemble movie, and it's all just set inside people's houses in Brooklyn.
Okay, let's have another one. Another one, please. Okay.
Меня зовут Лиза, я сценарист. начинающий. Вот, я хотела узнать, ну вот если, например, ты пишешь сценарий, и потом режиссер его очень сильно редактирует, ну даже не то чтобы редактирует, что-то подправляет так, что ты уже совсем не чувствуешь, что это твой сценарий, и то, что ты хотел там показать, ну короче, вообще уже совсем все по-другому получается. Бывали ли такие ситуации? Как вообще быть? Может быть, это просто, ну, не стоит сотрудничать с такими людьми или как-то менее ранимо воспринимать это?
Do you have this problem when you write a script and somebody is changing it so much that you cannot recognize what you've done?
Well, I'm only now one of the scripts I'm writing right now. One of my jobs, I am writing a script for another director for the first time. I've never done that, and I'm enjoying the process. And he's been very specific about what he wants. But at the same time, it's liberating to know that, you know, once I give it to him, it's his movie.
So you're not responsible?
I'm not responsible. I'm responsible for giving him a good document that reads well, that actors will get excited by, the characters, and that everyone on the crew who reads it, production designer, cinematographer, wardrobe, everyone who reads the script will know what they need to do. What he wants to do with it beyond that is up to him, because that's sort of what I signed up for. It's not that I don't care what happens to it, because I like it, but it's that he asked me to write his next movie, so I'm writing it for him. And I'm very comfortable with the fact that he could change it 100%. He could take the ending and put it at the beginning. And I understand from making my own movies that sometimes that's just what happens. And also, I think part of that is because I do that to my own scripts. I change them so much when we're shooting that anyone else who wants to do that, I understand why they're doing it, because I have to do it all the time. Even this new movie that we're editing right now, you know, we showed a cut to people that was 112 minutes, and then a week later we had a cut that's 95 minutes. So 7 minutes we just got rid of in 4 days. And that happens, and I do that to my own movies every time. So obviously someone else will do that.
But
it would be very sad if the only perfect script I wrote was for someone else.
But is it possible to defend your vision if you have some creative differences? I don't know, maybe if you work for some, you know, in a modern producer's medium, is it possible? So I know you don't have this experience because you wrote for your own films, so you don't work for this big producer system, Hollywood system. But is it possible in a modern cinema to defend your vision as a screenwriter?
Probably. I mean, it just depends on what you're doing. I mean, it depends on what the job is. If you're writing a low-budget independent movie for someone else to direct, I would imagine you'll live a lot longer and be a lot more sane if you just tell yourself stuff's going to happen. If you write something that's a 10-page scene set in a car where people are talking, almost definitely an independent production will look at it and say, well, we can't do that.
If it's not Cosmopolis.
Sure, which is not a cheap movie either. So an independent production could look at a 10-page scene in a car and say, there's just no way. I understand that you wrote this in the car, but we have to do it on a bench because we can't shoot in a process with a car. So understanding that that stuff happens, I think for me just comes from the fact that I've always done that on my own scripts, where there'll be a scene and then we're figuring out how to shoot it, and someone just says, there's just no way we can do this. It's just out of the question. And then I just have to say, okay, well, I'll come up with something else. So just understanding that stuff always goes wrong, and stuff always goes not according to plan, I think will help you understand that the producers, that it's just their job to get the movie made, but maybe they're not. And if you're just the writer, the good news is that it's not your fault. If the movie's a disaster, you can say for the rest of your life, well, the script was great, but the producer and the director definitely messed it up. They didn't have enough money, they didn't have enough time. And, you know, it could have been a great movie, and no one will say, well, that's your fault.
No, one of the lessons that we have is like the stuff goes wrong. The next one, please. The next one.
У меня два вопроса. Какие фильмы повлияли на вас при создании «Королевы земли»? Потому что после просмотра сразу вспоминается «Сияние» Стэнли Кубрика, где главный герой сходил с ума с каждым днем. Это первый вопрос. И второй. Вы сейчас работаете над экранизацией Винни Пуха. Вы смотрели советский мультфильм?
So did The Shining influence you in any way? The Queen-averse, did it influence in any way?
And what's the part about The Shining?
No,
or what the
no.
part about Winnie the Pooh, I mean?
The Winnie the Pooh, there is a Soviet version of the,
Oh,
of
yeah,
the
I
film,
do- yes.
and Disney actually acquired the rights for it. It's very different, I mean,
Yes.
visually. But yeah, the first one was the what films influenced you, and what films influenced the Queen of Earth.
Right. I have seen the Soviet Pooh cartoons. They're great.
Okay. We love it more than the American one.
I would imagine so,
Yeah.
yeah. That's true. I didn't think about that. They're excellent. They're really good. And I understand that he's very popular, and he's on stamps.
Yeah,
Maybe
yep.
not here, but in Russia.
In Russia, maybe.
That
Yeah.
character
Yeah.
appears on stamps and is very popular. Yes, those cartoons are very good. They're very faithful to the original stories. There's only 3 of them. Each one's about 15 minutes or so.
Yeah.
But they're very good. They had the rights too. If the question was about the rights, there was some very strange dealings with the rights to Winnie the Pooh, where they were sort of licensed to all these different parts of the world. So that's how you have Soviet Pooh and Disney Pooh. And for Queen of Earth, right before shooting Queen of Earth, I saw in the theater in the span of a couple of weeks several Kubrick movies. I did not see The Shining, but I did see Barry Lyndon in 2001. Obviously, I'd seen them all already, but seeing them in the theater was very exciting. And in those movies, and in The Shining, there's a lot of dissolves and fades, because those movies take place over a very clear time period. The Shining takes place over a winter, and 2001 takes place over a very defined time period of a mission. And the use of dissolves and fades, I thought, this is perfect. This is exactly the best way to show that time is passing. And Queen of Earth takes place over a week. And I thought for anything where you have the days of the week, you need those dissolves, the way Kubrick dissolves a lot. Because if you have people sitting outside and you dissolve and now they're inside and it's dark and it was light in the previous scene, you know that 6 hours have passed. And it doesn't really matter what happened, because by skipping over it, you're saying nothing happened. And his films do that brilliantly. The Shining very much so does that. And then we were certainly thinking about that quite a bit. And other films for Queen of Earth, there's two low-budget American horror films, one from the 50s and one from the 70s. One is called Carnival of Souls, which I love and we talked about a lot. And one is called Let's Scare Jessica to Death, which is a pretty...
A nice title.
Yeah, it's a great title. It's, like a lake house movie where a woman thinks that there's ghosts in the house. And it's both fantastic films about a woman sort of going crazy because she thinks that something's out to get her. And we talked about those films pretty much every day.
Okay, guys, the next one, please. Next one? Okay.
Алекс, у меня несколько вопросов. С чего вы начинаете работу над сценарием? Когда закладываете конфликт в историю и как конфликт определяет структуру сценария? Спасибо.
Well, my movies don't really have conflicts. They're more just conflicts of personalities. There's no external conflict that needs resolving. There's no, we only have until the end of the weekend in order to get the house clean before mom and dad come home. So the conflicts are always just between people. So the movies are always, the first thing is just who are the people. So for Queen of Earth, where the conflict is really just between these 2 women characters, Catherine and Virginia, the only thing to start with is, well, who is Catherine and what is wrong with her and why doesn't her friend want to help her? Why does her friend treat her like she's crazy? And now to me, that question is enough for a whole movie and a whole script, because those 2 characters are very clear now to me that I'm asking that question. Or in the case of Listen Up, Philip, it's who is this guy? Why, as you're saying in the opening scene, is he being so cruel to his ex-girlfriend and to his old college roommate? And what kind of a person would act that way? Why would someone act that way? And when that person goes home, how do they treat their girlfriend? And that to me is necessary to understand the first scene of the movie, is who is the character in the scene. And then it becomes easy to say, now what does that character do when he encounters this person? When that character meets his lifelong hero, how does he act? When that character meets a beautiful girl who's flirting with him, how does he act? And now the conflict is always just, how does this character create conflict between himself and other people? And you know, how do these personalities sort of clash against each other? Watching personalities clash, for me, is much more exciting than watching a plot unfold.
And what's your starting point for the script? That was the question. Where do you start? Where do you start when you start the script?
On the first page, presumably.
Okay. So maybe it comes from the idea, or do you imagine the character,
Yeah,
or?
well, by the time, in order to start writing, I have to have been thinking about a movie for a very long time. So by the time I start, like I can't start unless I know almost everything that I need to know. So like another movie that I want to write, I've been thinking about at this point for about a year. I've never written anything down for it, ever.
You're just thinking
Yeah,
hard.
just on my mind is the thing I
Okay.
will write when I have the time. And also when I have the time, but I know enough to get through 2/3 of the movie without thinking at all anything new, because I've spent a year and a half, 2 years figuring out and everything that happens up until page 70.
Do you make notes?
No.
No notes.
If I can't remember it, it's probably not worth remembering.
So you have a great memory, actually.
I don't have a great memory at all. I don't have a very good memory. But if it's worth remembering, I'll remember it.
Okay. So the next one, please. Next one. Okay. The girl in the second row.
Здравствуйте, у меня вопрос тоже про сценарий. Вы сказали, что для вас важен конфликт между персонажами, и считаете ли вы, что характер, то есть персонаж, важнее там, сюжетной линии и развивает конфликт? Это первый вопрос. И второй вопрос. Вы говорили о том, что сценарий, естественно, меняется в процессе работы, там несколько драфтов, и съемки тоже влияют на изменение сценария. И вот в вашей работе как сценариста и режиссера одновременно, когда вы понимаете, что сценарий закончен, и меняете ли вы его уже на съемках, или это происходит в процессе препродакшена и подготовки? Спасибо.
This is an important question, actually. When do you know that the script is over? When it is finished?
Yeah, I mean, the script is not done being changed until we're finished editing. Like I said, we cut 10 minutes out of this new movie. If I cut 10 pages out, it would have been a lot easier. We wouldn't have had to have shot all the stuff that we just deleted in one day. But unfortunately, I did not know that until I filmed it and edited it and watched it with a room full of people. But, you know, the script is sort of never finished, but in terms of changing it on set, there's never any rewriting. It's more just, it's sort of just not even part of it. The actors have generally memorized the script better than I have. So if they say, we're going to kind of change it, I don't need to write that down. We just sort of say, I say, okay, let's just shoot and show me what you're talking about. And then we're just sort of filming the changes to the script while we're moving along. Which means that at the end of the day, what you shot might not resemble what you had in your hand at the beginning of the day, but it's probably better. And if it's not, then you don't have to use it. It's just sort of an organic process, but similar to the first part of your question about being more character driven, so much of smaller movies is driven by the actors. I wouldn't be getting to make these movies if the actors weren't willing to come make a tiny movie for no money. So as long as it's actor-driven,
Lucrative offer.
there's nothing to offer, unfortunately. So as long as the movies are actor-driven, what drives an actor to accept the movie is a character they can really have fun with and collaborate and have their own say in the creation of. And that sort of gets them there. And just having a great character is more important for actors than having a great plot, because I won't make a movie if actors won't say yes, and they won't say yes if they don't love what they read on the page. So it just sort of all has to go hand in hand. And then they know that once they get there, they're probably going to have more input than usual in shaping what happens.
So we have the last one. Can we have the short and the last one? I think I'm gonna ask that. Would you forgive me for being such a fool to confuse your name in the beginning, because I'm a fan. I love your film.
Is that the question?
Yes.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Okay.
The answer is yes.
Yeah. So guys, this is Alex Росс Perry, the great director. You should watch his films, and we're looking forward to the new ones. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's fine.
No, it's not fine.
Well, the translator did it yesterday too. Huh? The translator did it yesterday.
No.